Hello, everyone. How are you? I am here. Yay! Welcome to the chat room with Dr. Yvette. And I am Dr. Yvette. So I am Yvette McQueen, MD, emergency physician and travel doctor, a global physician on a mission to educate about health, travel wellness, and disease prevention. So, as usual, I'm traveling. As you can see, I'm in a hotel room and I'm getting ready for my night shift. But I wanted to resume my medical chat room with Dr. Yvette. This is where I meet once a week with you, the public, and talk about various events in the medical world. So November is Diabetes Awareness Month. So I want to talk about diabetes. About 2 years ago, while I was traveling, I gave a tip a day, and it was about 5, 6 minutes every day. So this year, I'm just going to combine it with all the events, kind of put it together about diabetes information, and do it once a week. So hopefully you will come back on each Saturday afternoon at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time and join me for the medical chat room. So today I'm going to talk about Diabetes 101. What is it and why me? People are always like, why did this happen to me? Next week I will talk about basically some of the major basic diabetes management, about medications, about some other changes that had update in 2019 that the American Diabetic Association has included into the management of diabetes. The third week, I'm going to talk about diabetes and cooking, eating, cooking, and dining out with diabetes to be just in time for right before Thanksgiving. So hopefully I can give you some suggestions as far as preparing meals if you're diabetic or if you got a family of diabetic for Thanksgiving, and it can help you with your shopping list and just some alterations for people with diabetes during the holiday time. And then the last week, I'm going to talk about diabetes and lifestyle modifications, things that I help people because one of my other side jobs is that I'm actually a lifestyle coach for diabetics. So if you have diabetes, just been diagnosed with diabetes, and along with your physician, of course, you're under the care of your primary care physician and endocrinologist, that you want other things to help you. And we talk as far as my lifestyle modifications, talk about nutrition and wellness and self-care and the mental part that you deal with diabetes to help you live your best life with diabetes, or live your best life with someone that's living with diabetes. So that's why I'm here. Okay, so the medical chat room is here. I'm talking about Diabetes 101 today. I'm going to grab some water. Hold on. Yeah, getting a little dry here. The heat is on. Hydration is always good for you no matter what. Today was one of my travel days. I was flying, so I always have to make sure I stay even more hydrated on the days that I fly. Okay, so let's get into the groove. Diabetes, what is it? Most people, they're like, oh, girl, I got the sugar. You ever hear basically someone say, I got the sugar, or I got diabetes, or my sugar's up. That's because they're talking about the glucose level. And glucose is one of the forms of sugars that our body loves to use for energy. So our body uses glucose. It takes in whatever food we take, and it breaks, particularly carbohydrates, but it breaks down different types of food. And the single molecule is glucose that the cells love to use for energy. So the cells take in the glucose into their, all the tiny cells in your body take glucose in, and use that as an energy to function, do what they need to do, like your sweat cells, it makes sweat, and your heart cells, it keeps it pumping, your muscles keep you going. And that's why we have glucose in our body, and that's why it's important. What happens, of course, is if the glucose is not processed properly, you have accumulation in your blood. And over time, if elevated glucose in your blood, it wreaks havoc on your blood vessels. That's the biggest concern. So it affects your blood vessels. It makes them, it starts to destroy them. It will increase the clogging of blood vessels. So over time, high blood sugar or diabetes will actually affect all your organs in your body. So if it's not controlled, it affects your heart. You're more at risk for a heart attack. It affects your kidneys. You're at risk for kidney disease, and that's one of the big ones as far as uncontrolled diabetes will actually cause kidney disease and kidney failure, end up being on dialysis. It affects the small blood vessels in your like your toes and your legs and things like that, because that means you're not getting good circulation in your extremities, because when you down here, the blood vessels get smaller, and it's just like anything that goes from a big blood vessel to a small blood vessel, and the smaller ones are hurt first, basically. That's why people end up having toes amputated, or you get a wound in your foot or your hand and it doesn't heal well because the diabetes, the blood sugar is uncontrolled. It affects the blood vessels. You're not getting circulation very good. It affects your eyes. The small blood vessels in your eyes has been known to cause blindness. You're more at risk for stroke in your head because it affects blood vessel. And once again, if it's affecting that blood vessels and causing constriction, what goes in hand with it, the cousin hypertension. So that's a whole nother topic. But that's what happens. So if the heart, the kidneys, the eyes, and your extremities, your skin. So that's why you want to keep your blood sugar under control once they find out that you have it. So who's at risk? Who knows they have diabetes? So in the United States, 33 million people right now is walking around with diabetes. But the problem is about 83 million other people, the other 2/3 people, don't even realize they're at risk or even are what we call borderline diabetes. So you're at risk. So these are your risk factors. You're at risk for diabetes, of course, if it runs in the family. Mother, father, sister, brother. Someone in your close, immediate family has had diabetes, you're at risk. You're at risk, and then we'll talk about the different types, but autoimmune disease. Autoimmune disease is where your body attacks itself. So you're at risk for what we'll call type 1 diabetes. Genetic, basically, you're born that way. You're at risk for type 2 diabetes if you have obesity. And that's the major reason why most Americans, United States citizens, they say, are at risk, because we have been pushed into that. About 50% of us are what they call in the obesity range. Even though if you look at yourself, you feel like you're not obese. I don't think I'm obese, but medically, technically, I am. I'm in that category. So because of our lifestyle in the United States, the processed food, the lack of movement, the lack of exercise, that has put us at risk for diabetes. Also is known to be in certain ethnic populations that as far as African Americans, Native Americans, Latinos, and having a family history of it definitely puts us at risk to have more diabetes. So those are the risk factors you got to look and you go, okay, that part is not my fault. So you have to realize that there's certain things you're at risk for, and that's why lifestyle changes or lifestyle modifications make a difference, because you can't change your genes. So if you're autoimmune, you can't change that, but you can kind of set off things. So I talked about the type of diabetes. So I'm going to talk about this. We put people in 4 categories. So first, let's talk about type 1. Type 1 diabetes is a genetic disposition where your body does not make insulin effectively. So insulin there's an organ in your stomach. Basically, your stomach sits right here, and behind it is a organ called the pancreas. And the pancreas produces the insulin. And the insulin in your body is after you eat, your body sends different signals. We signals, chemicals, enzymes, hormones. It sends it and they say, hey, insulin, I got glucose. I broke all the food down and I got glucose to go into the cells. So insulin helps the glucose to go. So here's a cell and here's the glucose and it needs to go into the cell. Well, insulin helps it. Insulin helps to push it into the cell so it can use its energy. If you're not making enough insulin in your body, you don't have it to push the glucose into your cell, and so glucose just hang around in the bloodstream. I'm just hanging around. Okay, I can't get in the cell. I can't get in the cell to help the cell, so I'm just going to hang around. You eat more glucose go. I'm just, hey. And that's how the blood sugar go up. So that's type 1 diabetes. You're not making enough insulin. Type 2, let's see. Type 2 diabetes is where you make insulin, but it doesn't work effectively. So it is there, insulin's there, glucose is there, but they're not playing good in the sandbox. They're just not playing good together. So you have insulin, so you actually need other things to help to push either push the glucose into the cell or get rid of the glucose and filter it out of your body. A lot of times the glucose is filtered through the kidney. That's why they have people test the urine to see if glucose is in the urine, because some of the medication pushes the glucose from the blood to the urine and pushes out. That's how they get rid of it. So that's type 2. Still same effect. Glucose levels are too high, but you have insulin. It just does not work effectively. There's gestational diabetes, and gestational means that during pregnancy, a female, somewhere within the 10 months while she's pregnant, or 40 weeks, sorry, she's pregnant, she develops what we call gestational diabetes, or where her blood sugar is not controlled. And at that point, either due to diet changes or medicine, they can control her blood sugar. That puts the baby at risk. That puts the baby at risk of being larger and more overweight. Anything over 8 pounds or more, we worry about gestational diabetes. Actually, and that will affect the glucose will actually affect the growth of the baby. It also affects the mom, and it puts her at risk for diabetes later on in life. So a lot of times with gestational diabetes, women will have it during pregnancy and then it goes away. But later on in life, they're at risk for developing type 2 diabetes. Okay, and that's also something that is genetic and runs in certain ethnic groups. And the biggest thing we worry about right now is pre-diabetes. And that's when I talked about 83 million people walking around borderline diabetics or almost diabetes and don't even know it. So this is what it is. Pre-diabetes, when we check for diabetes, we're checking, everybody's like, oh, my sugar's up, my sugar's up. And you see diabetics pricking their finger, checking their blood sugar. Well, yes, we do go by the blood sugar, but we go by another test. So we go by a test called hemoglobin A1C. It's a blood test that your doctor has to do. Actually, I've seen it in the drugstore, Walgreens, CVS, or something. You can buy a kit and check what your hemoglobin A1C is. Now that we know that's what we need to test. But the doctors will order if they think you're at risk or they think you have the symptoms of diabetes. We check what we call hemoglobin A1C. So hemoglobin A1C is something that sits hemoglobin. So you've probably heard this with anemic patients. So hemoglobin sits on your red blood cells. So in your body, you have two cells, white cells and red cells, and they have different function. So on your red cells is something called hemoglobin. And then there's another molecule that sits on the hemoglobin that monitors the blood sugar. Well, red cells stay around your body for 90 days. So even if you go into the doctor's office and we're checking your blood sugar just at one time, so you go in the doctor's office, you go in the emergency room, wherever you go, and we go, oh, well, your blood sugar is 100, 120. It's okay at that moment. Hemoglobin A1C will tell us what your blood sugar has been in the last 90 days. So the past 3 months, we can tell the average of what your hemoglobin or what your blood glucose has been in the last 3 months. That's the indicator that we go by whether you're in what stage of diabetes. So these are some numbers. And if you need to write this down, write it down. I understand it. I'll repeat it again. Normal hemoglobin A1C is less than 5.7. It's a percentage, it's a ratio a percentage. So hemoglobin A1C less than 5.7 is normal. 5.7 to 6.4 is what we call the pre-diabetic stage. So you're in a range between 5.7 and 6.4. You are at risk, most likely in the next few months to a year, to go on to type 2 diabetes, what we call pre-diabetes. If you're over 6.4, you're automatically called diabetes. No question. Your sugar could be 120 that day, but if your hemoglobin A1C is over 6.4, you are a diabetic. That's a diagnosis of diabetes. So, so if you're looking at blood sugars, we look at blood sugars, and there's fasting and non-fasting. Sometimes your doctor come in and say, don't eat for 8 to 12 hours. That's fasting. So if your blood sugar is fasting blood sugar should be less than 100. So that's like if you did eat after midnight, went to the appointment at 8 or 10 in the morning, got your blood work, your blood sugar should be under 100. If it's between 100 and 140? Let me double check that. I don't want to get you the wrong numbers. Let's see. Pre-diabetes, fasting. Yeah. So fasting is between 100 and 125. You're in pre-diabetes. Random, like if you just went to the doctor's office or in the ER. So if we take your blood sugar in ER, we usually take up to about 130, 140 normal because, we know people aren't fasting. They probably just ate and then came to the emergency room, or they was eating the chips in the waiting room. If you're between 140 and 200, you're considered pre-diabetic. But if you're in my emergency room and you haven't been fasting and your blood sugar is over 200, we're calling that diabetes, okay? You should be started on medication. And actually, some of the recommendations from ADA and endocrinologists, that's the hormone people that control diabetes, that pre-diabetics should be started on medication. Of course, we like to start what we call lifestyle modifications, diet control, exercise, but they may start you. So if you get a doctor's blood work and they say you are pre-diabetes, they actually may start you on medication while you're making those changes so that you don't progress on to diabetes. So that actually may happen, okay? So pre-diabetes, that's the stage that we can offset type 2 diabetes. And that's where we hit people the strongest. And once again, a lot of people don't even realize they're in that stage. They haven't been to a doctor in a while, or the doctor never tested, or they don't think they have the symptoms. So what would make you think you have diabetes? So some simple things you don't realize affects you, and you say, oh, I didn't realize that would make me, I didn't think I would have diabetes because of that. So we say people, of course, the classic sign is if you're always eating, you're just always hungry. Not just always eating, but you're always hungry. You're always eating because your glucose, your body kind of starves itself. Remember, you have glucose in your blood, but your cells can't use the glucose because it's not getting in the cells. So the cells are actually like, I need energy. So you're always telling yourself you're hungry. It's like a cycle. And then you eat more, which breaks down to more glucose, and the glucose gets higher, but the cells still can't use it. So that's why you need the medicine to push the cells or make your insulin work more effectively. So you're eating a lot. You eat more than normal. You're drinking a lot of water. So you're drinking a lot of water because you're thirsty. And that's because your blood has a lot of glucose. And you see, if you take a glass of water, simple water, and you can see through it, water, see through it, clear. You throw a lot of sugar in there, stir it up, it gets cloudy, right? That's your blood. It gets thicker and it gets more slurry. You add more sugar and it gets more slurry. And that's why it affects the blood vessels and basically clogs up the blood vessels. But that also makes you dehydrated because then your blood is not moving as much and you feel dehydrated. And that's why you drink a lot. You're more thirsty. And then you pee a lot. You're trying to pee out the glucose and your kidney says, let me get rid of it. And you just keep peeing. So when we say people eat a lot, they drink a lot of water, and they peeing a lot. Let me think about this. Is it just a simple UTI or urinary tract infection? Or do they have diabetes? And that's another thing. People with diabetes get a lot of urinary tract infections, particularly women. Gets a lot of urinary tract infections if they have diabetes. So you're finding like, I'm getting urinary tract infections every 2 or 3 months. Why? You might have to have your diabetes check, your hemoglobin A1C. Women that get a lot of yeast infections, vaginal yeast infections, is at risk for diabetes. You may want to have your hemoglobin A1C checked for diabetes, okay? Here's something people don't realize. Dry skin. And it's not just the weather, and it's just not the water, but dry, itchy skin is a sign of diabetes. That's because once again, the blood vessels get smaller as they get to the skin, and it's not getting the hydration it needs because of that slurry, that thick, sugary blood is not getting to those blood vessels in the skin. So you get dry, itchy skin. That is a sign of diabetes. And if you've noticed that some people say, well, my skin is changing as I get older. Have your hemoglobin A1C checked. Could it be just the winter weather? Could it just be a change of water? Some cities have hard water or soft water. But have your hemoglobin A1C checked for diabetes. Your eyesight. Has your eyesight changed drastically? When was the last time? I've been wearing glasses since I was 6. So I get my eyes checked regularly. So, but if you're not wearing glasses, when was the last time you had your eyes checked? Okay. And that's if you're saying, oh, I can't see the computer screen all of a sudden, and everything's getting blurry. have your hemoglobin A1C checked because that may be a sign of diabetes. Okay, so those are some of the things that put you at risk. So let's go back over that. Diabetes is when you have high blood sugar in your body, and there's either you have insulin and it's not working effectively, and that's type 2. You're not making enough insulin, and that's type 1. Or you're pre-diabetic and you're about to go into type 2 diabetes, okay? You want your hemoglobin A1C checked by your doctor. 5.7, less than 5.7 is normal. 5.7 to 6.4 is what we call pre-diabetes. Over 6.4, let me do that again. 5.7 and under 5.7 is normal for hemoglobin A1C. 5.7 to 6.4 is pre-diabetes. Anything over 6.4 is considered diabetes, okay? And is most likely type 2 diabetes. So, 83 million Americans, they say, are in that pre-diabetic stage, and many don't even know it. And it can be, so diabetes can actually be prevented and offset it by actually knowing your numbers, what we call knowing your numbers. And those are that's one of the numbers you should know. Not just what your sugar is at one time, but your hemoglobin A1C, because that's going to tell me what your average sugar was over the last 3 months, okay? So that's what diabetes is. You know, that's the basics of Diabetes 101. What is it? It's, high blood sugar running around, and too much sugar in your bloodstream, and your cells cannot use it as energy effectively because it's not getting into the cells, because either you don't have enough insulin to push it into the cells, or the insulin and the glucose won't play fairly in the blood. That's basically it. Okay, so we got to get them to play fairly, and we usually do that by changes in lifestyle, changes in diet, and medication, which I will go over in week 2. So we covered a lot today as far as diet, and this is, once again, November is diabetes awareness, because if you're aware of it, you can do something about it, right? Even if you aren't having no signs and symptoms, you say, hey, my sister has it, or my father has it, and have they had their blood checked lately? Let's check it out. So are they having a dry, itchy skin and they don't realize it? Are they having blurry vision and their eyes haven't been checked recently? Are they peeing a lot more? Are they getting a lot of urinary tract infections? Are they getting a lot of yeast infections? That's something to check. So let's see, make sure I covered everything. That's it for Diabetes 101. What is it and why do I have it? So I hope that has been helpful for you, the medical chat room with Dr. Yvette. I am going to be here every Saturday at 5:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, to talk about what's going on in the medical world, your health world, your mental health. All that plays a part in you being a healthy person, you being a well person. It's all about wellness, because it's an overall thing. Wellness is an overall thing. It's several different components. It's not just medical. It's everything. So I want you to be a well person. I want you to be well and living your best life. So Diabetes 101, what is it and why me? I hope that was helpful. And I'll be back next Saturday, 5:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you have questions for me about what I talked about today, just throw it in the chat. And I can answer them individually or talk about them online again. So I am Yvette McQueen, MD, emergency physician and travel doctor. So you can find me on all social medias, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, where I give health tips and travel tips, healthy travel tips, at Yvette McQueen, MD. And my website is YvetteMcQueenMD.com. So hope to hear from you and hope to you come back and enjoy my medical chat room. Okay? Ciao for now. Peace.